Hello and welcome to this webinar for Horizon 2020 Science with and for Society, which I'll refer to as SwafS from this point onwards. My name is Dr. Siobhan Hendrick and I'm the National Contact Point for SwafS in Ireland. And the purpose really of this webinar is to give you an overview of what's coming up for 2020, which is going to be the last round of the SwafS programme. This is really going to be a general overview of the background to the SwafS programme. We'll delve a little bit into the topics that are coming up for 2020, and then I'll provide you with some tips on preparing your proposal. But if you have any questions or if you would like to join our mailing list to stay up to date, please get in touch with us at swafs@sfi.ie. So basically, the objective of the SwafS programme is really to build effective cooperation between science and society, to recruit new talent for science, and to pair scientific excellence with social awareness and responsibility. And if you're interested in participating in this program, you really should go and read the general introduction to the work program, which you can download from the portal. But as stated in there, it says that all SwafS topics are expected to support one or more of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So in terms of how SwafS works, the SwafS lines of activities are all underpinned by the dimensions of responsible research and innovation, or RRI. And RRI is an inclusive approach to research and innovation. It implies that societal actors work together to better align both the process in R&I and its outcomes with the values, needs, and expectations of society. And so there are 6 dimensions here. It's ethics, open science, public engagement, gender, science education, and it's all underpinned by governance. So in terms of ethics, it's taking into account the ethical dimension, but ethics is given the highest priority in EU-funded research. So it really is a cross-cutting issue. All of the activities carried out under Horizon 2020 must comply with ethical principles and relevant national, EU, and international legislation. So that's something to bear in mind, that although SwafS does focus specifically kind of on ethics, it is cross-cutting across Horizon 2020. And because of that, ethics-specific information is available on the portal in the funding guide, cross-cutting issues section, and the second dimension then of RI is open science. So in terms of open science and SwafS, it really is enabling easier access to scientific results. So it's not specifically just open access, but also includes the citizen science piece. So open access is about providing online access to scientific information free of charge to reader. And it typically focuses on peer-reviewed scientific research articles and research data. Whereas open science more broadly represents an approach to research that's collaborative, transparent, accessible, and the key components are, of course, open access, but citizen science. And citizen science in this context covers a range of different levels of participation. So it can be from raising public knowledge about science, encouraging citizens to participate in the scientific process by observing, gathering, and processing data, right up to setting the scientific agenda and co-designing and implementing science-related policies. The third dimension of RRI included in SwafS activity is public engagement. In this context, public engagement in RRI is about co-creating the future with citizens and civil society organisations. It's also about bringing on board the widest possible diversity of actors that would not normally interact with each other on matters of science and technology. The fourth dimension of RRI is gender. And this is really to ensure gender equality both in the research process and the research content. So specifically the 3 topics or dimensions that are looked at are gender balance in the research teams, gender balance in decision making, and the gender dimension in the research and innovation itself. And for the research and innovation actions included in SwafS, the gender dimension is now explicit in the excellence criterion. And the 5th dimension of RI then is science education. So this is really about making science education and careers attractive for young people and aims at improving science and technology literacy in our society. So in order to make this more attractive for young people, a sustainable and cross-cutting interaction between the relevant actors in the field is crucial. And these relevant actors can include different levels of the education system, universities and other higher education establishments, research and innovation funding and performing organisations, civil society organisations and NGOs, industry, policymakers, professors, teachers, students and pupils, science museums and science centres. And then this is all underpinned by governance, because good governance of science and innovation requires that institutions take into account the principles and requirements of responsible research and innovation. So overall, the important piece for SwafS is about engaging with the societal actors. But it's really important that when you're preparing your proposal, you look at the topic and pay attention to cross-cutting priorities that have been listed. So things like ethics, open science, and gender are very much cross-cutting priorities. And it's a very important part of the evaluation. So you are expected to comment on these. And the best guidance we would really be able to give you would be to go to the frequently asked questions. And I'll provide a little bit more information about this at the end of the webinar. And that will help you in addressing these cross-cutting issues. But really, for SwafS, it's about engaging with the societal actors, and you need to look carefully at the topic for why a cross-cutting action has been flagged. So how does that filter then into the SwafS program and the SwafS lines of activities? So there are 5 strategic orientations that are kind of built on the foundation of those R&I principles. And then for the coming year, we've got 14 topics in each 14 topics across the 5 strategic orientations. And then these topics are further broken down into either a coordination and support action or a research and innovation action. So coordination and support actions are really about bringing together those different partnerships in society. It's about sharing best practice and knowledge exchange, whereas the research and innovation action is about coming up with innovative ways to address a specific challenge with the research element and generation of new knowledge. And overall, SwafS works in a challenge-based approach. So each of the 14 topics that are identified have a specific challenge that the applicants need to address. Some are quite broad and they can be a bottom-up, and it's up to you in terms of how you interpret it and how you address it, where some may be a little bit more specific, but we'll delve into those a little bit more. So important points for the coming year. So the call opens on the 10th of December 2019 and closes on the 15th of April 2020. There are 2 topics this year that have 2-stage. So the first stage of those topics will close on the 15th of April, and then the second stage deadline is the 17th of November 2020. The indicative budget for this year is 63.2 million. Potentially there may be some scope that this might change, but it's not been confirmed yet because there is a little bit of extra money for Horizon 2020, the last year of it, but it's not clear exactly where that's going yet. So it's important to know there's still a substantial amount of money left for 2020. So this is going to cover 14 topics. The project budgets will range from 0.2 million to 4 million. And this is going to be a very competitive round of the call because actually it's going to be the last round of SwafS in general, because integration of SwafS activities are being proposed across Horizon Europe. So there won't be a discrete SwafS program as there has been in Horizon 2020, but rather continuity of SwafS type activities will either be mainstreamed under RRI, or they will be found under the widening participation and strengthening of the European research area part of Horizon Europe. And that may include continuity of SwafS types activities, but that has yet to be confirmed. But I can confirm that there won't be a discrete SwafS program in Horizon Europe. So it's really important that if you're interested in participating in this, this is your chance to do it this year. So we'll move on to the strategic orientations. So strategic orientation 1 is accelerating and catalyzing processes of institutional change. So this will contribute to implementing the RRI keys through institutional governance changes in research funding and research performing organizations in an integrated way and to disseminate good practices. It will also allow projects to be developed that involve researchers, policymakers, citizens and industry, and to monitor impact and progress. Developing new partnerships will be a priority in this strategic orientation. So there are 4 topics in this strategic orientation. The first one is SwafS 1, which appeared last year, and it is open schooling and collaboration on science education. This is a 2-stage process again this year, and it's a coordinating support action. It's important to note that this was a very competitive call last year. The success rate was only about 3%, and they expect to fund 3 projects in the region of 1.5 million in the coming year. The second topic is SwafS 8, and this is research innovation needs and skills training in PhDs. This is a coordinating support action, and again, there will be roughly 10 projects funded in the region of 200 to 300,000. The success rate was about 8% last year, but it's important to note that actually there was a much bigger budget for individual projects last year, whereas the Commission is proposing this year to have much smaller projects but fund more of them. And really what they're looking at is integrating skills courses focusing on open science and entrepreneurship within the PhD training. They would like to see development of the integration of a new course into the training that already exists. The Commission would like the higher education institutes to track postgraduates and demonstrate how this training has impacted on future career prospects. They also want to see that counselling is provided for career choices for researchers for the careers after their PhD. It doesn't have to be fully running after the project, but needs to be in development, like a stepping stone. The Commission also referenced the European Universities Alliance and that they're developing a joint education strategy, which will also have a research dimension that needs to be developed. But they've suggested that this research dimension could potentially be explored through these smaller projects, which are roughly about 200k per project. Particularly what applicants are being asked to do is to organise one training on open science or entrepreneurship within a PhD training programme. It's beyond the scope of this call to develop a new programme, and university alliances have to already exist if they want to be included in the call. So for anybody that may have looked at this in the past and is interested in participating again this year, it's really important that to advise that actually the text has been tweaked quite a lot for 2020. So you need to really read this carefully, and particularly the scope of the call. So the next topic in this strategic orientation is SwafS 23, and this is grounding RI in society with a focus on citizen science. This is a new topic for 2020, and it's a coordinating support action again. Roughly 4 projects at 1.5 million are going to be funded. And this is going to focus on citizen science, looking for long-lasting change and to make better connections with citizens. So ideally, the Commission would like consortia to comprise of one experienced partner and one newcomer, and partners that have not worked together before and a wide geographical spread are particularly welcome. So the fourth topic in this strategic orientation and the second of our 2-stage applications is SwafS 24, Science Education Outside the Classroom. And again, this is a new topic for 2020. This is a research and innovation action, and roughly 2 projects are going to be funded at about 1.3 to 1.7 million each. So the Commission acknowledged that there are definitely cases where information is readily available to students, but question whether this should be more recognised for what it contributes in terms of more sophisticated consumers and scientific citizenship. So they're looking to really evaluate the knowledge and see how it influences today's citizens. Is it worth accreditation? An important point to note really is that all funded projects should have a platform on Scientix. So this is the community for science education in Europe. It collects and promotes best practices in science teaching and learning in Europe and organises trainings and workshops for STEM teachers. So the Commission noted that it fell out of the criteria for the last few rounds of education topics, but that it's definitely going to be included for 2020. So that's important to note. So the next strategic orientation is strategic orientation 2, and this is stepping up the support to gender equality in research and innovation policy. So gender equality plans really are the main policy instruments promoted through the European research area to advance gender equality in research organisations and universities. Based on progress so far, actions will be adapted to catalyse the changes in response to 3 objectives, and these are gender equality in scientific careers, gender balance in decision making, and the integration of the gender dimension in research content. So there are 3 topics in this strategic orientation. So the first one is SwafS 9, which appeared last year. This is supporting research organisations to implement gender equality plans. This is the coordinating support action. Roughly 3 projects are going to be funded at about 3 million each, and the success rate in 2019 was about 13%. So really what we're looking at here is that the Commission acknowledged that a lot has been learned already through the previous calls, and a gear tool has been developed. So this year, they're really looking at sustainability and how applicants will interact with the local authorities. And they suggest that the core of the budget really should go to the implementing institution. So it's about really implementing these gender equality plans. The second topic in this strategic orientation is a new one for 2020, and this is SwafS 25. So it's gender-based violence, including sexual harassment in research organisations and universities. This is a research and innovation action, and one project is likely to be funded at about 3.2 million. So I think the Commission really have acknowledged that we don't have sufficient knowledge to understand the state of play at the moment and who is most at risk for gender-based violence. So the aim really of this call is to collect data on the different forms in a minimum of 16 different member states. So it's really important to note that the activities that you propose in your project need to cover at least 16 member states, but you don't actually have to have partners from each of these countries. What they're looking for is to develop case studies, recommendations, and clear dissemination materials. And the final topic in this strategic orientation is SwafS 26. So this is Innovators of the Future, Bridging the Gender Gap. So it's a coordinating support action with one project to be funded at 1.5 million. And really this is to counteract the underrepresentation of females in the innovation sector. So the Commission encourage applicants to work with projects that have already been funded and develop sustainable collaborative networks. Then the third strategic orientation that we're looking at is building the territorial dimension of SwafS partnerships. So territories are understood as geographical areas sharing common features, for example, economic, social, cultural environment. And SwafS will encourage partnerships between universities, formal and informal education institutes, science museums and centres, governments and public authorities, businesses and civil society organisations operating at a local, national and European levels with a view to sharing scientific knowledge and supporting user-led innovation. They're looking really for new ways of opening up research and innovation broadly to society according to specific contexts and will be developed, thus ensuring the involvement of communities in different territorial contexts, promotion of gender equality and consideration of all involvement of all people, irrespective of their age, gender, ethnicity and socioeconomic background. There's only one topic to be funded in this strategic orientation, and this is SwafS 14, which again appeared last year. It's supporting the development of territorial responsible research and innovation. And the success rate last year was about 20%, so it's pretty decent. So this is a coordinating support action, and they expect to fund 3 projects at around 2 million each. Ideally, what the Commission are really looking for is to build self-sustaining research and innovation ecosystems, and it's important really to look at the work programme in terms of what the Commission means by RRI here. Successful projects should have local and regional authorities as active partners, and consortia should make strong efforts to involve all kinds of citizens. Really encourage you to look and know what projects have been funded in this area before, because they really want to avoid duplication of smart specialisation platforms and consider previous findings. And it's important to note that there is a possibility of cascading grants, so that means you may be able to provide support to third parties as part of this call, which could be quite relevant. Okay, so the fourth strategic orientation we're looking at then is exploring and supporting citizen science. So citizen science covers a range of different levels of participation, from raising public knowledge about science, encouraging citizens to participate in the scientific process by observing, gathering and processing data, right up to setting the scientific agenda and co-designing and implementing science-related policies. Potential aspects to explore include how citizen science can act as a catalyst to develop scientific skills and competencies. It can act as a tool for informal and formal science education of young people and adults. It can counter perceived anti-intellectual attitudes in society, and it can raise the scientific literacy of European citizens and promote social inclusion and employability. So there are 4 topics to be funded in this strategic orientation. The first one is SwafS 27, and this is a new topic for this year. And it's important to note that it is actually 2 subtopics in this. So it really builds very much on experience in the previous years, and innovation and science are very difficult to pull apart in citizen science. So therefore this call is really quite open to allow applicants to bring their ideas to the table in efforts to reach out to all parts of society. It is a research innovation action. It's new for this year, but as I say, it kind of builds on experience in previous years. The total budget is 8 million, so there will be roughly 4 projects funded in this topic. So, so the first subtopic is subtopic A, citizen science. So this is going to focus on hands-on citizen science activities. Proposals may focus on one particular area of scientific inquiry to tackle, or several, though social science and humanities or transdisciplinary approaches would be particularly welcome. The projects, and also they would like to see a novel means of social inclusion and the use of technologies. So the projects that the Commission want to fund are really about doing citizen science rather than looking at evaluation of citizen science. They're looking at ways of building cooperation more closely to develop an open science sharing ecosystem. It's important to note that while the Commission have welcomed a transdisciplinary approach, they were reluctant to provide a definition on what they mean by this, preferring to leave it open to interpretation by applicants, but they acknowledge that it involves more than just working together across disciplines, but may also include sharing knowledge, the application of knowledge, and being more open generally. Subtopic B is frugal innovation. So this subtopic will support hands-on activities to develop frugal innovations, which minimize cost and complexity and are aimed at low-income population groups in any part of the world that are scalable, durable, and environmentally sustainable, but often use state-of-the-art technologies and know-how. Frugal innovation should really be with and by citizens, and it can apply in all contexts with low-income populations. The Commission expects to see citizens working alongside innovators in this topic, and particular attention to ethics and involvement of social science and humanities partners is recommended. Efforts to showcase innovations is encouraged, and there should be an attempt to evaluate the impact of working in this manner on frugal innovations. So important for both of these subtopics is that international cooperation is encouraged, and that cascade funding is quite potentially very powerful here, particularly if you're working with citizen groups. Really important to note that you address one or other subtopic. You don't have to address both in your proposal, so it's either citizen science or frugal innovation that you're working towards. And the Commission have indicated that at least one project from each subtopic will be funded, but it really depends on the ranking in terms of how balanced the portfolio is going to be. And it's important to note that there are additional dissemination obligations for this topic that are you can read in the annex on the portal. Okay, so the second topic in this strategic orientation is SwafS 28, which is the ethics of organoids. And this is a coordinating support action with roughly 2 projects at about 3 million to be funded. It's again new for 2020. And the logic really behind this is that this type of research into organoids will change how we see ourselves and research, and it will raise lots of ethical and social issues. So the Commission have introduced this topic as a request based on requests from the research community, including social scientists and policymakers. The call is really about this general new research area, which has been named by the Commission as one of the top 10 areas to watch. And so the Commission want the topic to help implement the ethics in a practical way with guidelines, a code, framework, and a best practice code of conduct. And it's really a bottom-up approach to building the code. So the third topic in the strategic orientation is SwafS 29, the ethics of technologies with high socioeconomic impact. Again, this is new for this year. One project is likely to be funded at 4 million, and it's a coordinating support action. So in terms of defining high socioeconomic impact, the European Commission are not going to be prescriptive on this. Applicants have to decide by themselves which are the most important technologies to focus on. And so what they've used are just as examples there, but really it's up to you to decide what you want to focus on for this project. And the final topic in this strategic orientation is SwafS 30, Responsible Open Science and Ethics and Integrity Perspective. Again, this is new for 2020, and one project is going to be funded at 2.5 million, and it's coordinating support action. And really, it's in acknowledgement that there is a responsible open science policy in the EU and many member states at the moment. And it's really about how the research community have to be open, but also be very careful of where they publish to try and avoid predatory journals and to be ethical. So it's really focusing in on how we can share best practice around that. And there's already the Embassy of Good Science, which is online, and it's a repository for research ethics and integrity training. So maybe useful to have a look at that when you're preparing your proposal and see how you could maybe build on that. So the final strategic orientation for the SwafS program is strategic orientation 5, building the knowledge base for SwafS. So really understanding the co-evolution of science and society will help proactive and anticipatory policy making. So that's the logic behind this strategic orientation. SwafS will examine how societal actors, including young people, behave, understand, react to, and interact with science and scientific developments, and their motives for engaging in science-related activities. This will include a focus on blind spots of research and innovation in relation to people's needs and concerns, in particular, scientific uncertainty, due and proportional precaution, means of measuring the integration of RI in science and innovation, and the gender dimension in the research content. So there are two topics in this strategic orientation. We have SwafS 19, taking stock and re-examining the role of science communication. So this is a research innovation action which appeared last year, and the success rate was about 17%. So roughly 3 projects are going to be funded at about 1.1.2 million in the coming year. And to address this specific challenge, the proposal will include a multidisciplinary team able to explore well-defined communication strategies, and this could include journalists, science communicators, scientists, educators, enterprises, economists, civil society citizens, legal experts, etc. And specificities related to gender, culture, territorial context, and the environment should also be considered. So really the topic aims to better understand how science is communicated and to develop improved ways to measure and assess science communication. Dissemination of the results should increase the communication of science in quantity and quality and favour the opening of research and innovation and the uptake of RI approach. It should eventually improve the quality and effectiveness of interactions between scientists, general media and the public. And what the Commission are really looking for here are innovative methods of science communication. And it's important to note that there are additional dissemination obligations for this topic as well. So please read the annex carefully. So the final topic then for SwafS 2020 is SwafS 31, a bottom-up approach to building the SwafS knowledge base. And this is a really, really open topic. It's a research and innovation action. Roughly 6 projects at about 1 million are going to be funded. It is a new topic for this year, but it's really been redeveloped from SwafS 20. So which ran last year. So basically the Commission have redeveloped the text to make it clear to applicants to bring ideas for where the research is missing. So essentially this is to fill in those gaps. So this year it's a 1-stage rather than a 2-stage call, and it aims to fill the gaps in the SwafS work programme. The Commission would like to see all actors from society involved in the research. And the difference really between this and last year was that in order to make it a really open bottom-up approach, the cross-cutting priorities were actually taken out, with the exception of RI, and it's 1 stage instead of 2. So applicants really are free to kind of address this in whatever way they feel fit. The Commission have said that they're free to move away from the scope actually and focus on specific challenge and impact instead. And the evidence base being filled is really the most important piece of this. So that's really an overview of the topics that are coming up for 2020. If you would like to know a bit more information about them, or if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. I mean, it's really just a very quick kind of overview of what we've got coming there. But some general tips would be to make sure that you read the work programme introduction, because that's really got the key pieces of information in there. And then in parallel with that, you look at the topics on the fundings and tender portal, because that will have some relevant information specific for this year, your cross-cutting priorities, which may not necessarily have been included in the work programme. So it's important that you look at both of those. And then at kind of later on in December, the Commission will release policy recordings for each of those topics. So you should watch those as well to really help you to try and get a general overview of kind of where the Commission is coming at for each of the topics. There also are additional dissemination obligations for topics 19, 23, 27, 28, 29 and 30. So it's really important that you pay attention to those if you're planning on applying to one of those topics. As well, I can't stress enough that you need to know EU funded projects that are related to your particular proposal to avoid duplication, because really the Commission want to be building on what they've funded in the past, and they expect you to have done your homework on that. So there is some help on the funding and tenders portal. You can search there's more information there on what was funded in the past, and if you're on Cordis you can also search there. Another suggestion would be to register for the SwafS stakeholder database. I'll show you that in another slide. It's on for the SysNet working group. And then also, it's really important in terms of you actually fitting your proposal in. You need to clearly understand the challenge that's being described and see how you're going to address it. If your proposal is a good fit, you need to be able to justify that. And remember that your proposal is going to be marked against 3 criteria. So that's excellent science, implementation, and impact. And it's really important that you score highly in all of those if you're going to be successful, because as I said, this is going to be a very competitive round of the call. But a lot of the time where people fall down is on impact, and so it's really important that you're able to clearly show what the impact of your work is going to be, not necessarily in the long term, but also what the actual immediate short-term impact at the end of your project is going to be. So that's really important. And finally, you really need to pay attention to the cross-cutting priorities. So go to the portal and read the cross-cutting priorities listed under the topics. It's really a very important part of the evaluation, so applicants have to comment on these. So some of the cross-cutting issues here for the coming year, we have RI, gender, open science, social science and humanities, and international cooperation. So there's a list there of all the different topics that have been identified as one or more of these cross-cutting issues. And how you can find out whether it's in yours is if you go to the portal, at the bottom of the topic description, where I've circled in red there, you will see what cross-cutting priorities they've identified. So it's really important that you check that and you address that in your proposal. Another way to consider really is that you should really check how the corresponding cross-cutting issue is integrated into the proposal. A successful proposal is expected to address them or convincingly explain why they're not relevant, and proposals addressing cross-cutting issues which are not explicitly mentioned in the scope of the topic can also be evaluated positively. If you go to the frequently asked questions on the funding and tenders portal, you will be able to search for lots of different questions that have come up over the years through SwafS, and that will be probably the best way for you to try and figure out how to address these cross-cutting issues. Because really there's an awful lot of information there that people have addressed in the past or had issues with in the past. So finally then, in terms of supports that are available to you, we can help you with a partner search. So if you go onto the SwafS page of the sfi.ie website, there's a partner search form there. If you complete that and send it to us at swafs@sfi.ie, we can circulate that both between our international and national network of people working in SwafS to help you with that. I suppose in terms of managing expectations, it's important to note that a lot of the time, people that are putting together a consortium don't necessarily advertise that they're looking for partners because they are often inundated. But a really good way is really by, I would suggest, reaching out to people that you have collaborated with in the past first. And, even if you have 1 or 2 people that you're willing to work with, maybe they'll have 1 or 2 more. And it's really about kind of looking within your own network before necessarily trying to just join a much wider consortium working on something. But of course, I mean, look, if you go to a brokerage event, that's also a really good way of kind of getting a face-to-face interaction with people that are putting together consortia. So the brokerage event for SwafS is coming up on the 16th of January, and it's going to be in Brussels. The link there will take you to more information about it and how you can register. If you're interested in attending this, there are some supports from Enterprise Ireland for travel, and there's also supports available for drafting the proposal as a coordinator, and that's all on www.horizon2020.ie. Really important to note that if you are applying for a travel grant, you need to submit your application within 1 month of when you plan to travel, because, or at least 1 month, sorry, before you plan to travel, to ensure that you get the best value. And if you're looking for coordinator support, you need to submit that application at least 10 weeks before the deadline of the call. So for coordinator and support action, that would be early February pretty much that you need to be submitting your proposal. So then, as I said before, you should join the SwafS stakeholder database. So that's at www.sysnetwork.eu. So SIS Network is the network of European national contact points, and they have lots of really relevant information that's really useful for SwafS. But if you join the stakeholder database, you can see what other people are working on in particular areas, and it may be useful for helping with your partner search. On the portal under each topic, you'll also see what organizations are looking for partners. So that could be useful as well. And I would also encourage you to join the Irish SwafS mailing list. So contact us at swafs@sfi.ie, and that's really the best way to keep up to date with all of the relevant activity that's happening in SwafS over the coming months. So this is the SysNet homepage, which, as I said before, is really useful. They have a lot of really useful information about brokerage events, but also they publish policy briefs in relation to the key areas of RRI, and they also have some success stories, so you can see what's been published in or what's been successful in the past. And as you can see there, it helps looking for project partners as well. So it really is a really useful information for anybody interested in participating in the SwafS program. And one other publication that actually they've just introduced in the last few months is a SwafS opportunities in other thematic areas across Horizon 2020. And this includes citizen science, ethics, gender equality, open access, open data, public engagement, responsible research and innovation, science communication, and science education. So for anybody working in these spaces or considering applying or putting together a proposal in any of these kind of topics or areas, you should really look at this opportunities as well, because it would be really, really interested, you know, in you obviously have put a lot of time into your proposal, so it would be really interesting to see where else in Horizon 2020 you might be able to use your proposal as well. So it's something worth considering. So that's it really. That's just a general overview of what's coming up for 2020. If you're not already signed up to the mailing list, please do so. And as I said before, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me, you know, swafs@sfi.ie. We really try and support in any way that we can. And if you are interested in perhaps, you know, having a phone call or meeting to discuss further maybe some of the topics or some proposals that you're putting together, please get in touch and we'll do our best to accommodate you. Thank you for listening.